It was a busy afternoon at a high-profile charity event, filled with the usual glitz and glamour. Celebrities, influencers, and dignitaries filled the room, their voices rising in a mixture of laughter and chatter. Among the crowd, a young girl stood alone near the back of the hall. Her hands were trembling, her heart pounding in her chest. Her name was Emily, and she had come to the event with her mother, who was busy talking to a friend. Emily wasn't used to being around so many people. She preferred the quiet of her small room, where she could read or draw in peace. But today was different. Today, she was about to do something that terrified her. Emily had a note in her hand. It was simple, just a few sentences, but it meant everything to her. She had spent days writing it, each word carefully chosen. And now, she had to give it to him. Barron Trump. The man who had always seemed so distant, so unreachable, a celebrity surrounded by layers of security. But Emily's message wasn't for the world. It was for him. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. But with every step, her legs felt weaker. Could she really do this? Would he even care? As Emily edged closer to Barron Trump, she noticed the sea of security surrounding him. His bodyguards were everywhere, scanning the crowd, their eyes sharp and watchful. She had read about how protective his security detail was, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. The guards moved like shadows, making sure no one got too close. Emily's heart raced even faster. She wanted to turn around and leave, but something deep inside told her she couldn't. This note, it wasn't just for Barron, it was for herself too. A way to overcome her fear, her shyness, and do something brave for once. She looked up at the guards, who were standing at attention, not even acknowledging her presence. Her legs wobbled, but she kept moving forward. Each step felt like a mountain to climb. As she reached the edge of Barron's circle, one of the bodyguards stepped forward, raising an eyebrow. "Can I help you, young lady?" he asked, his tone neutral but firm. Emily froze, unsure of how to respond. Would they let her through? Would they think she was trying to cause trouble? Before she could speak, Barron's voice cut through the tension. "Let her through," he said calmly. The security guard hesitated for a moment, but Barron's command was clear. Emily was allowed to approach him, and the world seemed to fall silent. The hum of the crowd faded away, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat in her ears. Barron stood there, tall and composed, surrounded by his bodyguards and a few close associates. He was even more impressive in person, his stature, his presence, but there was something different in his eyes as he looked down at Emily. She held out the note, her hands shaking, and tried to speak, but no words came out. Her mouth was dry, her throat tight. All the courage she had built up over the past few days seemed to disappear in an instant. Barron looked at her with curiosity, then gently took the note from her trembling hands. His eyes flickered to the paper, and for a moment, he was silent. Emily held her breath, wondering if he would even read it. What if it didn't matter to him? What if he just threw it away? Then, to her surprise, he smiled softly, a smile that seemed to reach his eyes. "Thank you," Barron said quietly, his voice calm and sincere. "I'll read it." Emily's heart soared. He hadn't just brushed her off. He had acknowledged her. It was all she needed. But little did she know, this simple act would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As Emily stood there, watching Barron Trump slowly unfold the note, a mix of anxiety and hope filled her chest. The room around them seemed to close in, the sounds muffled by the beating of her heart. She had no idea what Barron would think of the note, or if he even cared. But as she observed his face, she saw something unexpected. Barron's brow furrowed slightly as his eyes scanned the note, and then he paused. For a moment, he didn't speak, and Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. Had she said too much? Did he even understand her message? But then, Barron did something that no one could have anticipated. He looked up from the note, directly at Emily, and gave her a small yet genuine smile. It was a smile that wasn't rehearsed or forced, but one that seemed to reach deep into his soul. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice low but warm. "This means a lot." Emily's heart fluttered. She had hoped for this moment. But now that it was happening, it felt surreal. The simple kindness in his words left her speechless, her eyes welling up with tears. It was a moment she would never forget. The very next day, the news cycle was buzzing with headlines about Barron Trump's unexpected encounter with a shy young girl at the charity event. Reporters flooded the scene, trying to capture every detail of the story. Yet, in the chaos, no one seemed to fully understand the impact of the moment. Emily sat in her room, reading the articles online. Headlines screamed, "Barron Trump accepts heartfelt note from young fan." Shy girl's brave gesture turns into viral moment. But none of the stories captured what had really happened, the quiet exchange of vulnerability and kindness. Emily couldn't believe it. She hadn't just handed Barron a note. She had opened up a door to a world where small acts of kindness could mean something more. But even as the world began to praise Barron for his reaction, Emily felt a deep, emotional connection to the moment, one that only she understood. She realized that her shy, simple act had sparked something much bigger, a message that would resonate beyond the media frenzy. The world needed more of this, more human connection, more kindness, more empathy. In the days following the event, Barron Trump found himself overwhelmed by the media attention. Despite the flurry of news stories about his kindness, Barron's mind kept returning to Emily and the note. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than what the press was reporting. One morning, as he sat in his private office, he looked out the window at the bustling city below. The world seemed so fast-paced, so full of noise. But Emily's gesture had made him realize something important. Sometimes, it's the quiet moments that matter most. Barron decided to do something he hadn't done in a long time. Reach out. He instructed his assistant to find Emily, the young girl who had handed him the note. He wanted to thank her in person. As he sat down to write her a letter, he thought about how simple acts of kindness often get lost in a world full of distractions. His letter would be different from all the media stories. It wouldn't be about the headlines. It would be about the human connection they had shared. He wrote, "Sometimes the simplest gestures can change a life. Thank you for reminding me of that." Barron Trump sat in his private office, staring out the window at the bustling city below. The noise of the world seemed so distant from the quiet, unexpected encounter he had experienced just days ago. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily, the shy girl who had approached him at the charity event. Her face, filled with nervous anticipation, had stayed with him long after the moment had passed. The world around him was filled with luxury, security, and expectations, but Emily had reminded him of something far more important, the simple power of kindness. He had received so many accolades for his response, but none of that seemed to matter. What truly mattered was the connection they had shared, however brief. He felt an overwhelming urge to do something more, something that would show her just how much that moment meant to him. He sat down at his desk and began writing. It wasn't a formal letter or a statement for the press. It was a heartfelt message, one that he hoped would reach Emily and show her that her vulnerability had made an impact. He signed the letter, "With gratitude, Barron Trump." He asked his assistant to make it happen. Barron was determined to meet the shy girl again. Days passed, and Emily's life began to feel like it was spiraling in all directions. The media coverage of the event had been overwhelming, and her phone was flooded with messages from people she didn't even know. Everyone seemed to be talking about the note, about her bravery. But despite the overwhelming attention, Emily couldn't escape the feeling that something was missing. She had never expected the encounter with Barron Trump to be more than a fleeting moment. To her surprise, it felt as though the connection they shared was deeper than she could understand. Then one day, she received an unexpected package. It wasn't from anyone she knew personally. The return address only said, "From Barron." Her heart skipped a beat. Inside the package was a small box, elegantly wrapped. Emily opened it carefully, her hands trembling. Inside was a silver pendant shaped like a heart, Along with it, a note was attached that read, "For Emily, whose bravery reminded me of the kindness in the world. This is a symbol of the power of human connection. May it always remind you to be brave and kind, as you showed me. Barron Trump." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she held the pendant. She had never expected anything like this. She felt seen. She felt understood. Word about the pendant and Barron's gesture spread quickly. It wasn't long before the story of the shy girl and the compassionate response from Barron Trump became a viral sensation. News outlets across the world covered the story, but they missed something. They didn't capture the full impact of what had really happened. For Emily, the gift wasn't just the pendant. It was a reminder that even in a world so big and noisy, small acts of kindness could make a lasting difference. It had changed the way she viewed the world, the way she saw herself. And what was even more remarkable was that Barron's gesture had inspired others. Social media was flooded with messages from people around the world, all sharing their own stories of kindness and compassion. Emily's simple act of giving a note to Barron had sparked a movement. But as much as the world was touched, Emily couldn't help but wonder, would Barron ever truly understand the depth of how much his kindness had meant to her? After the whirlwind of media coverage, Emily's life began to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. It wasn't just the attention she had received from handing Barron Trump the note, but the ripple effect that came with it. People were reaching out to her, thanking her for showing that small acts of kindness mattered. She received messages from complete strangers who were inspired by her bravery, and some shared how her story had given them hope during tough times. But despite the world's admiration, Emily still couldn't shake the feeling that her moment with Barron was incomplete. She had always been a shy, reserved person, and the note she gave him had been more than just a message. It was a part of her heart. Yet she still didn't know how he truly felt about it. Then one afternoon, Emily received another letter. This time, it was different. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, and her pulse quickened as she opened it. The letter began, "Emily, I've been following the impact you've made, and it's been more powerful than anything I could have imagined. The kindness you showed me has stayed with me, and I want to personally thank you." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she read on. Barron had taken the time to acknowledge the ripple effect she had started. A week passed since the letter, and Emily's emotions were all over the place. She never expected to hear from Barron Trump again, let alone receive a personal message from him. The small gesture had turned into something bigger than she could have ever imagined. But just as she was beginning to come to terms with the thought that her encounter with Barron had ended, an unexpected phone call changed everything. "Hello, is this Emily?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is Emily," she replied, her voice shaky. "This is Barron Trump's assistant," the voice continued. "Mr. Trump would like to meet you. He wants to thank you personally for the impact your note had on him." Emily felt her heart stop. Barron Trump wanted to meet her? After all this time, all she had done was hand him a simple note, and now she was going to meet him face to face. It felt unreal, like a dream. The assistant explained the logistics, where to meet, what to expect. Emily hung up the phone, her hands trembling, knowing that this moment would change everything. The day arrived. Emily stood outside a quiet cafe, her heart pounding in her chest. The world felt like it had stopped moving, leaving her suspended in time. She had never imagined that something as small as handing Barron Trump a note could lead to this. As she looked around nervously, she noticed 2 security guards standing across the street, scanning the crowd with sharp eyes. Emily had heard about Barron's security team, but seeing them in person made it all feel even more real. She was about to meet Barron Trump, and everything she had imagined was about to come true. Moments later, Barron emerged from a sleek black car, flanked by his guards. He walked toward Emily with a calm, measured pace, his presence commanding but approachable. When he reached her, he smiled, the same warm smile that had made her feel seen at the event. "Emily," he said, his voice sincere, "it's a pleasure to finally meet you." Emily could hardly breathe. Her hands trembled as Barron extended his hand. She shook it, and in that moment, everything felt surreal. This was no longer just about the note or the media. It was about two people connecting in the most human way possible, but what Barron did next would take her by complete surprise, and it was something that would change her forever. Barron Trump stood in front of Emily, his presence calm yet undeniably powerful. The security guards were stationed discreetly in the background, their vigilant eyes scanning the surroundings, a constant reminder of the world Barron lived in. But in this moment, all of that faded away. It was just him and Emily, two people connected by an unexpected, quiet moment that had the power to change everything. Emily's heart raced as Barron looked at her with a soft smile, almost as if he understood the vulnerability she felt. She had never imagined that a simple note would lead to this moment, standing face to face with someone who was so much a part of the public eye. Barron stepped closer, and before Emily could speak, he gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "Your kindness meant more than you know." Emily's throat tightened, and tears began to well in her eyes. It wasn't the gesture itself that overwhelmed her. It was the way Barron had taken the time to truly appreciate what she had done. He had no obligation to acknowledge her, yet he did, and it made her feel seen in a world where she often felt invisible. After their brief meeting, Barron turned to leave, but then he paused and looked back at Emily. "I want to invite you to something," he said, his voice serious but kind. "I'm hosting a charity event next week, and I think you'd make a difference there." Emily couldn't believe her ears. An invitation? From Barron Trump? This was the last thing she had expected. She had only wanted to give him a note, a message from the heart. But now, Barron was offering her a chance to be part of something bigger than herself. "Are you sure?" Emily asked, still in disbelief. "I mean, I'm just a regular person. I don't know if I belong in something like that." Barron smiled, his eyes soft with understanding. "You belong, Emily. Sometimes the most unexpected people make the biggest impact. I want you to be there." As the conversation ended, Emily stood there, feeling a mixture of shock and gratitude. What had started as a shy, simple note had now led to an opportunity she couldn't have dreamed of. But with this invitation came a new sense of responsibility. She couldn't back out now. She had to find the courage to show up, not just for Barron, but for herself. The day of the charity event arrived, and Emily could hardly believe she was walking into the grand hall where the most influential people in the world were gathered. The air was thick with excitement and nervous energy as guests in formal attire mingled and talked. Emily, in her simple dress, felt completely out of place. She had never been in a situation like this before, and she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. As she entered the room, Barron spotted her from across the crowd. He waved her over with a smile that made her feel like she truly belonged. She hesitated for a moment before walking toward him, feeling like a fish out of water. "Emily, I'm glad you made it," Barron said warmly as she approached. "I knew you would." Despite the grandness of the event, Barron made her feel as though it was just the two of them in the room. His presence was calming, and he took the time to introduce her to others, making sure she felt comfortable and included. For the first time that day, Emily felt like she wasn't invisible. She was part of something important. But little did she know, this event would change her life in ways she never imagined. The charity event was in full swing, with conversations echoing through the grand hall. The clinking of glasses and laughter filled the air, but Emily felt a strange mix of unease and hope. She had never been in a crowd like this before, and the high-profile guests made her feel like she didn't belong. But Barron's presence reassured her. He had become more than just a public figure to Emily. He had become a symbol of kindness, a reminder that even in a world so often defined by wealth and status, true humanity could still shine through. As the night progressed, Barron kept checking in with her. He introduced her to others, made sure she had everything she needed, and even took time to listen when Emily shared her thoughts. It was as if, in the whirlwind of his life, he had chosen this moment to slow down and connect with someone who needed it. His kindness wasn't just a gesture, it was a lifeline. Emily couldn't help but be moved by the realization that Barron was more than just the son of a celebrity. He was a person who cared about others, even in the midst of a chaotic world. In that moment, Emily felt seen, truly seen for the first time. The event was nearing its end, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. She and Barron had spoken several times throughout the evening, and each conversation had deepened her understanding of the kind of person he was. But there was one thing left unsaid, one thing that had been building in Emily's heart since their first meeting. She had come to this event not just as an observer, but with a message of her own, a message that she had never expected to share. She had come here to thank Barron for the kindness he had shown her, for the way he had made her feel special and important. But now, standing in the middle of the grand hall, Emily realized that this wasn't just about her. As Barron spoke to a group of donors, Emily walked up to him, her heart pounding. She had no plan, no script, but she knew she had to say something. "Barron," she said, her voice shaky but determined, "you've made a bigger difference in my life than you'll ever know. Your kindness gave me the strength to believe in myself." Barron stopped talking to the group and turned to her, his expression softening. "Emily," he replied, his voice filled with genuine warmth, "I'm just glad you're here. Sometimes, we all need a little reminder of the good in the world." Emily smiled through her tears, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. The simple truth was clear: kindness, no matter how small, could change everything. The night ended, and the crowd began to disperse, but Emily felt something inside her had shifted forever. She had come to the charity event as a shy girl who had never imagined she would make an impact. Now she was leaving as someone who knew the true power of connection. In the days that followed, the media caught wind of Barron Trump's unexpected connection with Emily. News outlets picked up the story of the shy girl who had handed Barron a note and how a simple gesture from Barron had made headlines. People from around the world praised his kindness, but Emily knew that it wasn't just the headline that mattered. It was the real, human connection they had shared. Emily's life changed that day, not because she was famous or because she met Barron Trump, but because she had witnessed firsthand how a small act of kindness could create a ripple effect that reached far beyond what anyone could have imagined. It was a reminder that even in a chaotic world, kindness could still change lives. And with that realization, Emily looked into the camera and spoke directly to her viewers, her voice steady but emotional. "If you believe in the power of kindness, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. You never know, your simple act of kindness might just change someone's world, just like Barron's did for me."